It's Friday night, and welcome to this is Noob DM Ariel, and welcome to our second episode of the podcast. I'm glad that you are here to share this experience with us. I'm here once again with um, Zooming from Southern California with the talented Michelle Cram and maybe equally talented Chuck Rios. And these are my players, my colleagues in the Dungeons and Dragons adventures. We have been playing a 3.5 game, and if you've tuned into previous episodes or previous podcasts, we've been discussing the various editions of the game. So what we thought we'd do tonight is go through the have a little discussion about how the game has changed in in light of the renaissance resurgence of the D&D hobby, especially in light of fifth edition with such things as Geek and Sundry and Critical Role and those type of channels that have really sort of um, uh, catapulted D&D back into the spotlight. So we'll start with that, and then we'll also plan to talk a little bit about character creation because the first thing you got to do if you want to play a D&D game or any tabletop RPGs, you got to create a character, right? It's a role-playing game, so you got to create your character, and the process has changed over the years, and so we'll be discussing that as well. So welcome, guys. It's good to see you guys again. So can you briefly sort of I guess we'll start with Michelle, and some people have seen the previous episodes know already, but can you kind of talk about a little bit about your gaming background, how you got into Dungeons and Dragons, and what you like to do about the hobby, stuff like that?
I got into playing through my youth group. We started in like the basement, and then we moved to like the garage and stuff. I have 3.5 here. This is what I started with, melee and range. That's like the only difference. I think I started with just melee, and then they changed it a little bit, and now they got like raffle and everything. But it used to be like range and melee combat because it's different based on the strength and dexterity. And then I started playing with another group of friends. I got this version. This is kind of neat because it opens up.
Oh, okay.
Like, yeah. It's got a.
Yeah, I think what you had mentioned before about that looks pretty neat. That's a pretty nice character sheet. But you had mentioned before that one of the Go ahead. I'm sorry.
What's that character's name? Did it say it was Rios?
Yeah, it was Rios the Daring.
I'm gonna have to send a cease and desist letter to Michelle.
Yeah, I know.
What?
Oh man, yeah. I lost my train of thought. So
that's what I do. You hire me to derail the show.
You did, yeah. You're here to derail my train of thought.
What so I do.
That's what you do.
Very good at it.
No, I was just talking about how she gave her background. I guess maybe we could segue, Chuck. How did you get into playing Dungeons and Dragons and any nerdy type RPG?
Okay, well, I started playing tabletop RPGs in 1996. And I was 15 years old, and I played off and on ever since. I played Vampire the Masquerade. Tons of D&D, mostly 3.5 is what everyone usually in our age group has played the most of. I played a lot of White Wolf games. That was a World of Darkness. Vampire
Age of Darkness.
Age of
Darkness. Yeah.
The world, WOD, the World of Darkness.
World of Darkness. That's what it is.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of any tabletop RPG, even the Munchkin stuff, all the way to hardcore H.P. Lovecraft Cthulhu mythos.
Yeah, like most of us. Yeah.
I played a game of all of it, and but I still come back to Dungeons and Dragons just because, believe it or not, the simplicity of it, because it's just so familiar with everything else. But everything else besides Dungeons and Dragons is really fun. So
Yeah, and that's a good segue. I think if you started playing in the mid 90s, you said 95, 96, then second edition would have been all out right now. It was before third edition didn't hit until the year 2000, as I mentioned before. So you were playing right towards the end of second edition, which
is
was
why
kind of a lot like the original.
right, which is why, well, even back then you all had loose rules, right? So you would
We had
play,
what?
you had loose rules. So
Yeah,
it was always house rules, and no one ever understood the damn books anyways.
yeah.
And it was so
That's a
complicated.
great point. That's a great point.
Yeah, so when version 3 came out and then 3.5, that's why I like it better, because it simplified everything, and it just said, let's just use the 20 die and let's just get it.
Yeah.
You know, use 20 die for everything. That's all you really needed. I mean, you had your other stuff, but really all you needed was the 20 side.
Well, they call it the D20 system. And what happened was we had all this colorful dice, but the different classes all did different things. Like even initiative was different. So they're like, oh, let's just simplify it so that one, you know, your D20 will have your combat rolls and your saving throws and all that. And the other reason they did it was, I think this is a good segue into the article. So do you want to, should I share the screen and bring that up?
Oh yeah, I'm done talking. I love talking about myself, but I'm done.
Okay, let me see. Where is that thing? Share. Oops, that's not right.
COVID-19 hospitalizations break records in 6 California countries. Oh, counties.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the thing. So this how old was this? I don't know when this. I guess this came out. Oh, this came out earlier last year, right before.
Another screen. You got to go to another screen.
You're sharing your diary.
What?
There's a link on a Word document, a Word pad.
Oh.
I didn't know you felt that way about your own mother. That's very strange.
We'll have to edit some of the stuff out. Okay, let me see. How do I get to the screen?
That's what it's all about.
When
man.
you go back to the share screen, you can choose which one that you want to see.
Oh, okay. Let me do that. Share screen. And is that the right one? I think I got it right. That's the right one. Okay. I'm still a noob. I'm still a noob when it comes to Zoom. So some of these functions.
I found your article and I thought I found a totally different article. And I was all like reading it. And I was like, hey, Ariel's gonna love this one. So we were just looking at it. It turned out to be the same article.
Yeah. All right. Oh yeah, it's the same article, right? You found it. You're like, oh, yeah.
I had the same question.
Yeah. Anyway, so this apparently was came out. They posted on the Dice this website, Dicebreaker website, which is an RPG a gaming site, and it was published on January 7th, right before COVID, and it talks about the original D&D diehards that are still playing with the old rules, and we're talking about like Chuck. Starting in the mid 90s was like around second edition. This was even before first edition. This was like OG stuff, which was like this little see that I have a screenshot of
it was like Gary Gygax's bathroom.
Yeah.
That's how early
here we go. Can you guys see this shot? This is what the original one looked like.
I mean, we'll never probably play a game of it and put it away forever, but I want that box set.
Yeah. Oh, this box set is expensive. You can go on eBay and it'll go up in like $200 and up,
I mean, it's worth it. You're talking to the guy with a $6,000 hat rack.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I mean, I'd love to own it. That thing looks fun. Off on a tangent. I just wanted to own it.
No, you're totally fine. But basically, I was just saying that, this basically talks about how the old school diehards they still enjoy playing the old game as opposed to playing the fifth edition, because even though fifth edition is easier to get into, it's kind of simplified. They kind of like the crunchy stuff. And 3.5, which is what we were playing a little while ago when we had our campaign. 3.5 is kind of like the middle of the road, right?
I think of 3.5 as like the casual drinking a beer on the couch.
Yeah, that's a good analogy,
because that's how it felt when it came out.
Yeah. So here's a player's handbook for 3.5. You guys are all, well, actually this is 3.0, and then 3.0 they revised it. Yeah. And then they came came into fourth edition, which nobody liked, and it gets a bad rap, And the reason why people don't like it, in case you're curious, they don't really mention this in the article, but I know because I was playing fourth edition, and I liked it because I had a good DM. But the majority of the fandom, this came out around 2008, 2010, and it was right around the time where TSR sold the rights to Dungeons and Dragons to
Wizards of the Coast.
Wizards of the Coast.
Fourth edition came out of Wizards of the Coast predominantly. Right. They felt like they had to revive it, which I get it. Being a brand, you got to revive, right? But at least, it led to fifth edition, which is another podcast for another time.
Yeah, it led to fifth. Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah,
but basically,
that's what it led to it. So
you know why people didn't like fourth edition that much, Chuck?
No, I didn't. Well, let me say why I didn't like it.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah.
It just felt like, I don't know how to say it. I guess the dungeon master had too much power.
Yeah.
Over it, and it felt they were trying to shoot for an oversimplification.
Right.
But they didn't. They have you ever played those video games where they have the rail system where you're on a rail like going and you can't really go anywhere? Yeah. That's kind of how the fourth edition felt to me. But I'd like to hear your interpretation of it.
No, that's interesting because I never heard anybody say that because it was on a rail. I did find it. I kind of feel that fifth edition. Actually, interestingly enough, the edition that came after this, the modern edition, the one people are playing now, I think fifth edition feels like it's on a rail to me because what they do is they come out with the core books. Back in the day, we had like the old modules, right? We had like the little booklets that we could buy for like $5 or whatever, and then you run a whole campaign.
Tell you what to do.
They tell you what to do, but you could homebrew it. You could homebrew it,
Mm-hmm.
Now they do tell you what to do, and what's even worse is like they come out with like an adventure book, right? I don't have any. I have just the core books, but they come out with like a hard book, like an adventure book, and like pretend this is like a hard book, right? Pretend this is like an adventure, like Feywild or Forgotten Realms or whatever. But they tell you the whole thing, and it's what it's like. It's kind of like choose your own adventure type of thing. If you do this, remember the old choose your own adventure books that we had in grade school and stuff.
I think that's where it was leading. The fourth edition was kind of leading for me.
Yeah, and I think fifth edition is even worse in that respect, where you have a lot of choice. Like you have all these adventures, but it's not original because a lot of people don't make up their own world like the way Michelle was doing for the 3.5 that we were running.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we play a fifth edition game out of that starter set?
We did, and we were talking about that at the last episode, the first podcast, and we tried it. The 2000, I think it was like when it came out, 2014. It came out around 2014.
I didn't like that.
You didn't like it?
No, I mean you did a good job, but.
I did a terrible job because I wasn't familiar with the system.
Well, how bad can you do when we're reading off the script?
Yeah.
But yeah, you did a good job doing that. But I don't know. But either way, I don't want to cut it out.
No,
I think what Wizards of the Coast is trying to do is try to implement all of their stuff into the game. So they wanted you to use their figurines. They wanted you to use their.
Mm-hmm. No, that's exactly
little grid system, and they were trying to make it seem like, hey, like we got you. You can totally start playing from now. They wanted to get a new generation in too as well. So I think it was simplified so that a new generation could play and they could understand without knowing all the old rules. Yeah. And then it took all the imagination out of the battles.
Yeah, but you got to give it to them for having those free game nights everywhere, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing because I just wanted to show you guys that. So right now we are focusing on character creation, specifically with a focus on 3.5 D&D 3.5 edition. As you know, if you play any not just Dungeons and Dragons, but if you play any tabletop role-playing game, the first step is you have to fill out one of these, the character creation sheet. This is a fifth edition one, which people are familiar with, but we're going to focus and go over, actually react to a creator, going over some of the steps of how to properly fill out some of your ability scores and how we used to do it in 3.5 and then talk about that. So can we go ahead and roll that? Are we ready? Will we have that footage?
Yeah. We're
Nice.
ready to go here. Let me go ahead and start this baby up.
Yeah, we'll share the screen and we'll take a look at how to properly put together a 3.5 character in Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, so let me share that screen real quick. All right, here we go. Let's watch the segment on stats.
That's stats.
Stats are a character's 6 traits that are underlying bonuses they get on most rolls. The stats are as follows: strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma.
It's a little barbarian.
Yeah,
So-
just demonstrating the strength, one of the main ones, which is strength.
So let's go over the stats. I mean, you have a list besides what she already said. I mean, we can kind of explain what they all do. And I think it'd be important for people listening if you probably print out that 3.5 character sheet.
Yes, that's true. Thank you, Chuck, for reminding us. Well, we'll have a link to the description on this video, so you can go straight to where you can download and print the PDF version of the character sheet if you don't have one. Because I know the 3.5 being an older system, you can easily get the 5e sheet in a lot of locations, but the 3.5 is a little trickier, so we can point you in the right direction.
Yeah, I think it'd be great. Yeah, if you want to go over the stats, I mean, you have one right there, right?
Yeah, I do. And basically, what happened is, and we kind of, in the first part of the podcast, we were talking about how 3.5, the system, well, after the Wizards of the Coast was taken over by TSR was taking over the Wizards of the Coast. They wanted to go ahead and rebrand Dungeons and Dragons because what happened was people were familiar with the old system, but creators always want to put their own spin on it, and they were playing a lot of other systems, and the other systems were competing with D&D, and so like, well, it's a new era, this was around the year 2000 and new millennium. How do we rebrand it so that people can get back into it? So I think it was a little bit of a compromise between the old gamer set and sort of some of the new systems that were coming around. So that's when we came out with this D20 system. Chuck, remember before?
That's exactly what it felt like. That's a great description. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also Michelle pointed out yesterday that that's what it was too. When they were bought out by Wizards of the Coast,
right?
They changed all the rules from the old system.
Yeah,
and
primarily what they did is they did keep a little bit of the old flavor, of the old gaming flavor, but they added a bunch of more skills. Because if you go back to second edition, which came out around 89-ish, the end of the 80s,
Yep.
Second edition, they didn't have skills, but they had weapons proficiency. So if you're a fighter, you're proficient with like a sword or whatever equipment you're using,
they had everything but.
Yeah, and they had this thing called non-weapons proficiency. So if you're learning how to climb a wall or something and you don't know how to use it, you have to be proficient with a rope. It's not a weapon, but it's a rope, and you have to know how to do that. But basically, essentially, those were the same things as skills. They just didn't call them skills. They didn't start calling them skills until 3.5.
Yeah, that's a great example. I mean, so the stats are pretty straightforward. So if you printed out that 3.5 sheet, you can go ahead and go along with what the gamer is going to say right now.
Right.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and start that. Let's start with dice roll differences and what I think she's going to explain.
Yeah, go over the process of how to roll the dice in order to get
right.
your abilities, in order to get those abilities.
Exactly. And she's going to explain the difference. There's some differences, so she's going to explain them right now, actually.
Right.
Let's check it out.
Characters, and each gaming group has their own style, but the Dwarven Tavern special is this. First, you take 4 6-sided dice. You roll 3 times, each time keeping the highest roll. If on the second roll you get a higher number than the previously kept die, you may exchange those dice. You can even keep 2 dice from one roll, exchanging lower numbers for higher. You pretty much do all you can to get the highest score possible. You should end up with 3 dice, discounting the lower number on the 4th die for the final number, and add up the scores. 18 is the highest number you can get. If you don't like your roll, you can scrap it, on the condition you scrap all your rolls. These stats are indeed most important, but for now we'll just set them aside.
All right, so that's cool. So the dice roll differences. So if you notice there, she was using 4 6-sided dice, which is how we used to do it before the D20 system.
Right. So
That's
you're
the most
using the
common way
D6.
to do it.
Yeah.
So,
There's
but-
actually, if you read the old AD&D manuals or the first edition or second edition, they point out 3 or 4 different ways of doing it with just a D6. She chose the most common one, basically. You roll the 4,
that
and
is
you
the most
subtract
common.
1. You know, that's the most common one. But there's like really, if you look at the Dungeon Master's Guide for AD&D, there's like 4 or 5 different ways of doing it, just by rolling the 4 dice. How did you do it when you ran your games, or when you?
Well, we would do it with the four dice until before the D20 system came out. When I was a teenager, that's how we did it. And then when the D20 system came out, everyone threw their dice away, and it was only and they started using the spin downs. We used to call them spin downs.
The D20s, yeah,
D20s,
yeah.
And that's when we started using, and that kind of just took over because you can get the same stats. You know, I mean, you can get more numbers out of this. You know.
Yeah, and they call them
numbers.
Do you know? Do you know why they call them spin downs? The D20s. I think
you originally used to have to grab them like that, and you spin them, and it would land on a number.
Yeah, that's the way you roll them. But I think also there's a connection there with Magic: The Gathering, because remember TSR was bought over by. This is just a little bit of history trivia.
Yeah.
But TSR was, like we mentioned, was bought over by Wizards of the Coast, and Wizards of the Coast had no previous experience with Dungeons and Dragons.
Nope.
Well, they have some creators that had worked on it, but their main game was Magic: The Gathering, right?
Oh yeah,
so,
which that's another video for another time.
Yeah, it is. But I'm making that comparison or that point because on Magic: The Gathering, before they had the counters, you just use the D20 and you go down and just kind of mark the lives, you know. So you're going down, you do the spin out all the way until the character's dead. So I think that's part of what the terminology or whatever. But yeah, we use the same thing too. Like we use the D6. I mean, this is the method that I'm familiar with. And it wasn't until 3.5. This is a 3.5 video, which I'm surprised that she's using the old
the dice.
Yeah.
Well, this whole video, throughout the whole video, she's trying to simplify it. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. And you know, I'm pretty sure some people appreciate that.
Yeah.
But yeah, normally to sum it up, I mean, you can use the 4 6-sided dice, that's a perfectly awesome way to do it. Or you can just use a spin down. So I mean, there's not, you know, we went over a lot of the stuff of the history. There's not that much, unless you look in the Dungeon Master Guide. There's tons.
Yeah, there is.
They
give you plenty of. Yeah, they give you plenty of options. And I think what they did that is because they're like, oh, different groups are doing it this way. So this is the method that you know, and we don't want to leave anything out. But an interesting thing is that even in 5th edition, which I've been playing a couple of sessions lately, even in 5th edition, when they do it, they give you all the methods, but they also give you like the number, like just a straight down, I forgot what it's called, but they basically give you stats already pre-made, and you're like, here's it, you don't have to roll anything. You're like, it's like a build, right? Like a build, like a pre-made. And they're like, you have a set of numbers and you can put them anywhere you want. So you can put an 18 on your strength if you know you're gonna play a fighter, or you're gonna you can put a 20 on, I mean, a 16 on wisdom if you're gonna be a cleric, that type of thing. So they give you an option. You don't even have to roll them if you don't want to. But I think it's more fun to roll this.
I think it's more fun to roll too, especially when if you're a beginner.
Yeah.
So when I look at these videos, I try to look at it through the eyes of a beginner.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
And that's actually really good with the 4 6-sided dice. It's very easy to understand, and the viewers can go back. They'll have all the information. They can see it, how they kind of just, you know, deduct, right, until they get it down. I liked it. I mean, you know, the stats too were very simple, and it's really not that complicated. It seems complicated, but it's not. And what she said was a real important fact is every game has different rules, or house rules.
House rules, yeah.
So Dungeons and Dragons has never been a straight play by the rules game, but there are people, like you said, who play the original version, the brown booklets, version 1, and they love all the hard math, and they love all technicalities. And I've played one game of that, and I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you have the old school way, and then you got just the fun way. I like the fun way because every game I played has always been different. Every dungeon master is always different. Ariel DMs the game different than I DM a game.
Right. Everybody has their own style, and
that's the fun of it. The core stats and the core rules of making a character are all the same. Hey, we should move on to modifiers.
Yeah, good point, because she's going to talk about the modifiers, and we've been modifying, the abilities since the beginning. And so, what are your bonuses? What do you get after each roll? So let's roll that.
Okay.
The modifier goes up every other number, starting from 0 at the stat of 10. Then it escalates as such. 11 has +0, 12 has +1, 13 has +1, gradually increasing until you get an 18, which is a +4.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's interesting to note. Let's see if she can clear it.
For example, if your character has a 7th.
So what she was doing there, let's see if I can get it for everyone watching so that way they can kind of see.
Yeah.
This is when you read the manual, it tells you how to do this manually. Right. But this is a good representation of it. 10 and 11 always get 0. 12 and 13 always get +1. 14, 15s always get +2. 16, 17s always get +3. And if you roll 18, you get a +4.
Yeah.
So those are rolls. So the column in the left, for people who don't know, are going to be your rolls.
Yeah.
So if you roll a 13 in the modifier box on your character sheet, I don't know if you have it, you can hold it up, Ariel. That'd be kind of fun to show. It's not quite a 3.5. I think you have a 5, right?
Here's a 3.5.
3.5. Okay, so that's the modifier section. So you in the left section, you'd put your die roll. That's what you got, and then you got your modifier. So if you got a 10, you get 0. So you can put nothing in there or a 0. And the modifiers, you want to explain what a modifier is, because I know she's going to go into great detail, but you can watch that video for her. But just real quick.
Well, basically, when you modify roll, in 3.5 and earlier, you do the you add what you got. You take your roll and you get the number, and this is affected by your class primarily. Because if you're gonna be a fighter, you're gonna modify X amount of. You get your roll, and you typically strength, right? So your strength is gonna be, if you got an 18 roll, you're gonna put, you're gonna get X number additional to that. But there's also like the attack modifiers. So if you're gonna attack like any monster or anything like that, you will get, like, your weapons will give you modifications and spells. So there's a lot of things that will just modify. But this is your character creation, where you're first rolling up a character, a brand new character. These are the numbers that you're going to add to depending on what you roll. That's basically what it comes down to. The interesting thing.
Purpose.
Yeah,
that's the purpose of them. Is if I'm rolling against, if I'm doing an attack roll and I get a 14, and say their hit points on the goblin is a 15, I get that little extra nudge of +2. If it was on my strength or anything, so I can add that one little point so I can knock them out.
Exactly, correct. And also the interesting thing is, prior to 3.5, which is the system that we're focusing on, prior to this, they even had a special way to deal with the like if you had a high strength, if you were like, you could only be a fighter if you had like an 18 strength. Basically, that was a requirement, because obviously fighters have to have a high strength. For example, you can only be a cleric, they call it priest class, if you had a wisdom of 9, and above, right? But the interesting thing is, in AD&D first, second edition, before 3.5 came out, on the 18, they even had additional ones, like the fighter would have. They're going to percentile, so you could have extra strength for the fighter. Like if you got an 18 and you were a fighter, then you on your strength, then you roll a percentile dice, and it goes into 1801, 1810, 18. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, that was AD. That's why advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
That's right.
Definitely
And,
a long. That's definitely a long podcast.
and they got rid of that here in 3.5.
Yeah.
To simplify it. To simplify it.
Let's continue watching. I think we have about 20 more seconds. I think she explained something. I can cut it off too soon.
Okay.
For example, if your character has a 17th strength, your strength modifier, or strength mod, would be a +3.
Exactly.
It can go higher as well, and your character can
Plus
level up their stat every 4 levels as they go on their adventures.
So what she did there on that, when she did +5, you know, people are probably saying, "Oh, that 20
And your
You know,
character can level up their
isn't when you roll a 20, don't you get a +4?" That's true, but what she's explaining is the level up. So before that would have been a +4, and then when she got a level up, she erased it, put a 5.
Yeah.
So it just keeps going up.
Additional modifier to that.
Yeah. So right here, you know, I think that's what she's trying to say, right?
I think so. Ability roll is 20, and
I remember.
you know, like in
Exactly.
this 3rd edition, very simplified. 2nd edition, you know, you could go up 20, 22 because there's items that modify the roll. You know, so it's it's kind of a streamlined. This is where we first started seeing the streamlined system, so that everybody could kind of.
And it was pretty simple, and it changes with every DM. But like, say you got the dexterity of 20, you were a 4, then you got something with a +1 dexterity. It raised it up to 5, like a dagger, and then you lost the dagger, so it goes back to a 4.
Yeah. Right.
So it's stuff like that, but that's up to the player to keep track of, and the DM just keeps track of the base scores because you want the story to keep going. So that's a good tip for, you know, when you're a player, just to let the story keep going. Don't bog down the DM. With too much.
Yeah.
Don't bog down the DM with too much math. You know, they're already doing enough math.
Yeah, it can get kind of crunchy and, you know, fiddly, and some people, you know, and you can't be a rules lawyer and say, well, you know, the rule says this. Some people are like, well, you know, some of the rules also apply to other things that don't really make a whole lot of sense.
Right. Well, that's pretty good. That really covered the modifier. I knew the modifiers were going to be the longest section.
Yeah.
A lot of new players, you know, always tell me that they get confused with the modifiers.
Yeah.
You know,
because they don't. I think what's confusing is not. I mean, rolling is pretty simple, and then adding to it is pretty simple because it depends on your class and some variables. I think where it gets confusing, Chuck, is because you add like modifiers for everything. You know, like if you have a magic item, then that can modify your, you know, your ability a certain way, and then some of them are temporary because, like you said, you maybe have a ring of whatever, invisibility or whatever, and it modifies a certain thing, and then you lose it, so you have to keep track of it. But that's the DMs has to keep track of all of that stuff.
Yeah, that's the best tip we can give anybody. Most of the viewers are going to be players.
Yeah,
but,
right.
So that's the best tip we can give you is if you lose something, make sure you erase it. If you gain something, make sure you erase it and adjust it.
Yeah, help your DM out and keep track of it.
Help your DM out. We need all the help we can get. All right, the last segment, I think we're doing good on time, right? So
yeah, we're doing good on time.
The last segment is race, class, ability, scores, and this is pretty good. She's gonna go over this one. So this one's the longest one. She does a great job at this. Let's check it out.
Okay, let's check it out.
Next is choosing what character race you want to be. This is the fun part, as some races get different bonuses than others. If you're unsure or can't decide, the Taverniers always encourage the saying, roll for it. And after you selected what race, make sure you jot down all the important information given in the player's handbook. Things like speed, size, bonuses on skills and stats, and languages can be found in the traits section of the race. After races comes classes, another hard to decide part. Again, if you can't make up your mind, roll for it.
So, yeah, that's it. Really. So she's talking about races and classes. I like what she did here, where you get the races right here. I like that little system.
Yeah.
So she kind of just simplified it for you. I mean, you can make your own system. You can make the orc a 1. You can make the human a 4. You know, you can do whatever you want. For male, for female, it doesn't matter. That's a pretty good one to roll if you're new to it.
Yeah.
Do you have a list? Do you have a list of the races?
I do. The races didn't really change that much in third
Yeah.
edition. It wasn't until fourth and fifth edition that they added more races. So these are the basic races that were available up to a point. I think the only thing they took out is like the first edition had like an assassin.
So,
And-
yeah, he's gone, and he turned
Yeah.
into a thief.
Right,
There was a thief too, but
right.
they took out the assassin because you know that was more of a
So the races, well, she's got them right there on the screen, but you got the human, your halfling, your gnome, your half orc, dwarf, half elf, elf. That's pretty much what they limited you to, you know, and it seems like when you play it, that there would be more races. But I think two things come into play is one is again, you know, in the very first, basic D&D was very limited, right? Just, you know, kind of
Yeah.
Tolkien type races. And then second edition, they started doing a little bit more specialization where you would have your priests, you would have your illusionists, you would have your magic. I mean, it was called magic user, like the very beginning. But, but then they added the wizard, the specialty classes for the spellcasters, your wizards. Notice there's no well, I'm talking classes here, but and kind of mixing apples and oranges. But the reason I'm doing that is because in the earlier, the game didn't distinct. There was no distinction between races and classes. If you were an elf, you were an elf. You know, there was no such thing as an elf paladin, for example.
hence why they got rid of the assassin.
Yeah,
You know,
they got.
Because most
Yeah.
people would be like, well, assassin's not a race. Well, it was.
Yeah.
But they got rid of it because
Yeah, like a subclass, you know, it was a subclass, but yeah, a race could be your class. But it wasn't until the modern the 3.5 and beyond that you started getting a demarcation, and you could say, oh, well, you know, you're a human, but you a human could be everything for some reason. They can be anything. But if you're a dwarf, back in the day, in second edition, there were and I talked about this before, where there were like requirements. So if you were a specific race, you couldn't be a certain class, you know. And I was like, what?
Just for clarification, because we went over the races, do you have the classes?
Oh,
Anya?
yeah, I do have
Let's
a class.
go to the class. That way people understand what we're talking about. Because all you
Yeah.
really need to know is the race and the class. And what
Right.
she's going to talk about it later is you can check it out yourself, is ability scores. And that's the last thing you really got to roll before we're almost done.
Yeah.
So you just got to get your ability scores. That's it. After your
Well, the
races.
classes, basically, you got your barbarian. Yeah, they're specialized too. Like a barbarian is just like a specialized type of fighter. You got your bard, you got your cleric, and you got your fighter, that's regular fighter. You got your monk, and you got your paladin. You know, so they did specialize a little bit because paladin wasn't really something they focused in like way early on.
Nope.
It wasn't until I think Unearthed Arcana that they came out with the.
Well, yeah, the paladin was an offshoot of the cleric.
Yeah.
It's basically a cleric and a warrior.
Right.
That's
But
what
you
it
got
is.
your ranger, and your rogue. That rogues are still around, but they were the thieves that turn into
The thieves. Yep.
And then you have your you talk about the specialized casters like the sorcerer. You didn't have sorcerers back in the day, so now you have your sorcerer, and I think that's all the races in 3.5.
Wasn't it? Oh no, wizard came in 4.0, right?
No, wizard was in there. Yeah, sorry, I skipped wizard. So you got your
Okay.
wizard and your sorcerer.
Yeah, because I used to play wizard all the time.
Yeah.
Wizard bard.
So you got your wizard. It's just the different type of schools or where you got your magic. So you got your arcane magic, and you got the priests. They used to call them priests, but the clerics are basically your divine magic.
Yeah, and then you'd have the different subsect. You'd have the demonic demonic magic. You'd have your white magic, which is your healing magic. You'd have your undead magic, which wasn't really neither bad nor good. That actually brings me to another point. So we'll get let's get to ability scores real quick.
Yeah.
So what can we say about ability scores? Because that's the last thing. So once you pick your race, your class, then you got to do the ability scores. And the ability scores are very simple. I think, if I may, all you got to do is look in the book. When you get the book, look in your player's handbook, look at your race and your class, and then in your class, it'll have your ability score. It'll have your ability score on the race.
Well, the ability score is what you roll, but
Yeah.
but what you're talking about is like description. You're like how
Description.
description, yeah.
Yeah.
Ability, basically what your abilities do, right? Like what can you do if you have X ability? If you're a fighter, you can do dual wield, so you can fight with two weapons in each hand, that type of thing.
Yeah, so that's the ability scores, and then is that it on the sheet? Is that all you need to play, right?
On the 3-5 sheet, there's
You got
there's
feats of strength and
yeah.
all the little etra on the side, and feats of strength are one-time use kind of things that you can pick, and I don't know if they have that in the description of the class, I think. Right?
You're talking about feats?
Yeah.
Skills? Yeah. No,
The
they
feats
do
are
have it
good.
on the they do have a description of the class. It'll tell you what your skills are, and then you pick a number of skills, and then you can pick if you're a fighter, for example, you can take this feat. Michelle was saying the other night that what she didn't like was there never enough feats. It's like they give you X amount of feats, and then you can depends on your class.
Right. So the feats are kind of self-explanatory on what they do, but the rule is everyone has different rules. So what do you do with a feat? So because I like to let people use feats whenever. I mean, I don't really care about it. I mean, if you have that ability, it's kind of like if I have the ability to read a map, like I can't read a map more than once a day. It's kind of stupid.
Right.
So some people, I think the book tells you can only do it once per encounter.
To be honest, I don't remember how they distribute the feats in 3-5 because in my campaigns we used them sporadically, and we used them whenever that situation came up. But I think it goes by your class, right? If you have a class, you can choose a feat before that, but you got to let the DM know, and the DM says yes or no. You can do those.
He writes down your feats of strength. He's like, hey, I'd like to jump this tall building that's 5 stories, and can I do that? And he goes, oh yeah, you have that. So,
and if you have the feat, you can go ahead and use it. Some DMs will let you. I think looking at the character sheet, they do add the feats. So I think, once you pick your class and you say, okay, I'm going to be a monk, then I'm a monk 3rd level or whatever level you're at, then there's X number of feats you can take. But I'm with you. I'm like, some of those don't make sense. In 5th edition, it's pretty interesting because they just they do it the same way. They have feats and they're like, okay, well, you can take this number of skills, and then if you're this level, you can get this feat, because I think it started with 3.5. But let's see what she says about it, though. She might touch up on it. I don't remember.
Well, do you want, they can go back and check. I mean, that's kind of the end of our timestamps right there.
Oh yeah. No.
We can check it out.
I didn't remember she went. I don't think she goes into feats too much, if I recall
correctly. I think she touched on them, and then she told you something simplified on that. But I mean, they can check the video out for that. Just to recap, let's recap. Basically, you got your page. Let's recap what you got to do. You got to roll your stats.
You roll your abilities. Yeah, your stats. Yeah.
Abilities. You roll your modifiers.
Right.
You pick your race, your class, and then you roll your ability score.
Right.
Right.
You determine the usual stuff, which hasn't really changed in later editions. They've only changed the way you do it, like your hit points, basically. So you have your hit dice. So how many hit points you have, and the fighters have the most because they need strength, and then you determine the armor class. So like the armor class is basically in AD&D. I figured out that armor class really gets impacted by what you buy. You're a character, they give you X number of gold pieces or money, currency when you go out to the store.
Shop.
Yeah, you go to the shop and you buy some armor. If you can wear armor, if your class allows you to wear armor, because the wizards, you typically don't wear armor because it interferes with their.
No, it's just a breezy robe with nothing under.
Yeah, that's why they're squishy.
Oh,
but,
that's what they wear.
Yeah, that's what they wear. And then you go over everything she went over. There's something called base attack bonus, which basically you got a bonus for your attack. And then you go over your skills. So what are you good at? What skills this is your class and your level allow you to do it. And so you pick those, and then you get your gear.
Gear, and then your inventory, and then
and you get your feats. And if you're a spellcaster, you have to determine your spells. Like you're a wizard, you have to
pick your spells. We can do a whole other one. I can help with that because I've played nothing but spellcasters my whole entire D&D career.
And that's it. That's how you that's how you do 3.5, you know. It's not difficult. It's a little bit more time consuming than you know, like actually the AD&D, like second edition and earlier ones, it took a while to put together like a character. 3.5 is streamlined it. And so, you know,
I love 3.5. And I think Dwarven Tavern did a great job explaining it.
Absolutely. We got to give props to Dwarven Tavern for helping us out and describe the actual process and method. Because this is where really when you start out, we want people to start out. This is kind of what trips some people up, you know, especially if you're coming from 5th edition, because like, let's say you're playing 5th edition now, the modern game, and then, but then you join a group, which happens, and you're like, oh, we're playing, because the other day, like a couple months ago before COVID, I was playing, and they were still playing 4th edition, and they were like, yeah, because we have all the 4th edition material, we never bought the new stuff, so it really depends on your group. So if you have a group that's playing the older editions, you can translate a lot of the adventures into 5e, which a lot of people do. But it's going to kind of trip you up when you do the character creation because all, you know, they change so much of the methodology.
I agree. When you switch to 5th edition, you got to make your own key. You got to make a totally different character sheet.
You do. Yeah.
Ideally, you can make a different character sheet for everything, but 3.5 and 4 or 3 and 4, they kind of work together.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, they kind of, you just let your DM know.
Yeah, just let your DM know, and they can help you out. Most of them will be good enough to help sit down with you and help you put together a character right off the bat that you like. You know, the last thing I will say is that 2nd edition, one of the things that I don't really like that much is the restrictions. Like I said, when you roll, you know, you roll X amount of ability scores, but then you can't be a wizard because you don't have the requirements, or you can't be this, or you can't be that. And they did that because they wanted the game to balance out, and it does balance out, you know. Like the human, they can do anything because they can choose any class. They can what do you call it? Do multiple. Like
They're
they can
the most adaptable.
And they can level classes. Dual classing is what whatever it's called, where you can take levels of fighters, and then when you get 10th level, you can take a level of ranger if you want to, and start leveling those up.
And that allowed me to be a bard wizard.
Yeah. So you can multi-class. That's what it's called. You can multi-class.
Multi-class,
you know? Yeah. But only the human. But in 2nd edition, only on the earlier editions, only the human could do it, right? Why can't everybody do it? You know, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But they kind of did away with those restrictions.
That's where the DM comes in. I mean, I let people be who they want to be. The whole point of the game is to have fun. Yeah. To be a fantasy person, and
that's right.
I might be the loosest DM. That's going to be a meme, huh? The loosest DM. It's going to say it all slow. The loosest DM around.
That's right.
So, you know.
You're pretty loose to begin with, Chuck.
I'm losing my mind over here. Wait, so we have time. I got to address one last thing here.
Sure. Can we switch off this? You can stop sharing the screen now if you want.
Yeah, let's stop sharing the screen.
Okay, that's better. I can see you. I can see you in full view.
Full view. Let me see if I can get this going. But I want to talk about cancel culture in gaming.
Oh yeah, you want to touch up on that? Yeah, sure. We can do that. Cancel culture in gaming. Do you want to introduce the concept, or you want me to introduce it, or what do you want to do?
I think you have a broader scope of it because you're in the.
Okay, well, yeah, I brought it up for a point of discussion because it's been like a year now. Actually, they started talking about this a year ago when Critical Role and the YouTube streamers became really popular with 5th edition crowd. You know, because back in the day, when I started, nobody talked about role playing that much. It's something you did on the side, you know, and it wasn't really cool. It wasn't really mainstream.
Right.
And so nowadays, with all the explosion of technology, you couldn't see a game unless you got invited to somebody's house or, you know,
it's very esoteric.
Yeah. You go down to a basement and spend like a Friday night rolling dice, and what the hell are you doing? But now, you know, if anybody can watch like Critical Role or Geek and Sundry or any of these channels, they're like, oh, okay, there are people playing online, and you can see exactly how it goes, right? And so, but as a lot of things happen in mainstream, you know, when you have an influx of creative people artist or what have you. Everybody has a mishmash of ideas, but it's really up to like whoever has the IP or the license, right, to say these are the major changes that we're going to have. So back about a year ago, they started talking about, I think it happened after they added more, because fourth and fifth edition, they added way more.
Are you talking
races.
about when they were trying to get rid of the orcs?
Yeah, well, I was gonna get to that because actually they added more races like the Dragonborn, and but we've always had different type of elves, right? Like the high elf and the wood elf and stuff. But the black elves, or the drow elves, the dark elves, they were evil, and so some people, I don't know, there's a big leap of logic where it's saying, well, just because somebody has like dark skin or has looks a certain way, they necessarily have to be evil, and some people took it that far.
Where they're trying to get rid of someone out there has a crazy idea that they're trying to get rid of the evil races.
Evil races, yeah.
Yeah, they want to get rid of the whole alignment system altogether.
Yeah, they do, because alignment was tied into how you role play your character, so you could be.
It always is, though. Yeah,
it always has been. Yeah.
It just seems, my opinion, it just seems really ridiculous to get rid of the alignment system, because how am I going to play a paladin? Like if you're going to play a paladin, you're going to play a paladin if you want to play it. Now, this comes also with the DM rules, right? So if someone comes up and goes, I want to play an evil paladin, I'll be like, well, there's certain things that you can't do because of just the laws of nature. And but if you want to be an evil paladin, go for it. If that was your motive the whole time, you weren't a paladin to begin with. You were something else, right? Yeah. So I mean,
second edition. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm just what I was just saying is if you get rid of the evil races, if you get rid of the neutral, you won't tell what anybody is.
Yeah.
And it's harder. It's not harder for the people to understand. It's harder for the player to play that character.
I guess the thinking goes, well, orcs have always been portrayed as an evil race, right? They're always evil.
They always have.
But is it because of the upgrade? You get this into this whole scientific, which is a whole other discussion of nature versus nurture. What if an orc had been raised by a good fat or somebody that was nice to them the whole time? I was like, is it innate in an orc to be evil, or is it something that's portrayed?
Well, according to Tolkien, yeah.
Yeah.
According to Tolkien, he said the orc race is just a personification of evil.
Right.
They are basically, you can do like the evil slime in Ghostbusters. That's pretty much what an orc is.
Yeah. Right.
And according to Tolkien, that's why the elves hated them so much.
Right.
Because they are inherently evil. But in the later book, in the last book, I remember him talking about how orcs, there's a good orc. He talks about the diversity of orcs because he realized his own flaw, right? That they all can. There's no way. I mean, the statistics, the probability of all orcs being evil, or it doesn't work out.
Yeah, there's gotta. I mean, if you have a bunch of a culture, no matter what it is, I mean, ethnicity, race, whatever. I guess in this case it's culture. If you have a culture and you have them spread out all over, even in a fantasy world, like you said, odds are you're gonna have a subculture, and the subculture is gonna act completely different than the main culture because that's the way culture works, right?
They're going to get influence. I got my degree in humanities, so I know that's a fact.
Yeah, good. Yeah, you're right.
It doesn't matter what their skin color is.
No, you're completely right. And so when it comes to you and I, going back, and we've read the material, and we know that's a heavy, and people watching this channel probably do too. There's a heavy influence in the fantasy tropes, Tolkien and Lovecraft and everybody else that has kind of like a D&D is kind of what's so great about it. It's kind of to me, in my point of view, it's kind of like the law, what do you call it? Like a combination, like a mixing of everything. You got like a little flavor from every single trope, but some tropes are tropes.
Yeah. So I mean, basically, to sum it up, and there's a group of people out there, and I hope you're not part of them. But if you are, leave a comment. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
And I don't know why you'd leave a comment. Everyone tear you down. I don't know why they like that, but people want to get rid of the races, and and there's no there's more cons than pros to it.
Right.
With any situation, like I'd be with you if you could tell me why, and you can give me a big old list of why it'd be great to get rid of them, not just because someone's feelings are hurt.
I saw a great video. I saw a great video on this topic. And if I come across it again, I'll look for it. I'll add it to the description below, because I think people need to understand. If you read that comes from like a cultural perspective, and you read that, you'll see how it doesn't make sense to translate real life into fantasy tropes. To say, oh, just because there's a dark elf that makes necessarily evil, we should get rid of it because it's going to offend people. And, you could go the whole other way. And I think if you read this article, it'll tell you what the leaping logic, there's logical fallacies, right? We're in school, it's a logical fallacy, and it'll tell you why it doesn't make sense.
Maybe you could put a link, find the link later.
It's an interesting read, so I'll definitely go ahead and.
That's a good way to end the show, I think. I mean, we can ask a question. Well, I think we already answered it, but like maybe the final question, like, well, what can be done about this? I mean, ultimately, is it good to have an alignment system? I mean, because that's where it stems from.
Yeah, right.
But that's what's being attacked, right? Is the fact that they don't like anything neutral or under.
Yeah. Ultimately, they could have a proposal to get rid of alignment, because some people. You could, again, if you don't want to play with alignment in your system, that's the beauty about D&D too. You don't have to have alignment. You can make up your own system, right? If you don't think it's good, you can make up your own system and say, okay, like you said, a paladin is a righteous being because he gets his powers from the divine, and they have to act a moral code. And actually, in second edition, I was going to say the paladins lost all their abilities if they deviated from a moral code, right?
Right.
Because that's part of the role playing aspect of it, But who's to say that you can't play an evil paladin like you just said,
And you would play the paladin because you were never a paladin in the first place, or maybe you were because of the flaws of the human. That also goes with the race. So humans are flawed.
Yeah.
And if you were righteous one day, but then you gained knowledge that you shouldn't have gained, or you chose to listen to the knowledge, and then you changed, and now you're a thief,
Yeah. Or maybe you were always a thief, but you were dabbling into like trying to get. That's the thing. You could always dabble into other things, and then you could call yourself. Hey, maybe you're a thief pretending to be a paladin. That happens too, right?
Right. Are you an orc?
Yeah.
You want to just. You want to smash. See, that's the beauty of the alignment. That's my pro for alignment. You're a good, you're a certain kind of person in real life. Who you are is who you are, and then you come to the D&D world, and I just want to play an evil orc and smash things. No one's gonna be down on you for doing that.
Well, maybe your party will be. It's gonna be hard to get along if everybody's like lawful good in your party or whatever.
It's gonna be hard, but then you realize you could still make it fun. Because you'll have the D&D, because you're just kidding, but you're throwing a cog in the machine just to see what happens. But that's the way you want to play it. It's just like a video game,
Right, and the DM can say, okay, you have a side quest. If you want to go smash stuff up, this is what you're doing. But your party's not going to follow you. They're doing this. There's a lot of ways to adjudicate it. And
if it gets dark, it gets dark. I mean, here's another tip. We've been giving tips to new players all the time. So if you're in a game and someone says something crazy, I mean, there's a limit to what goes on. Like say if you're an orc or you're a good person, you have a person who wants to play an evil one, he gives them a side quest to go slaughter human babies or something. That might be drawing the line or something. You might feel weird, but if it's made out of maliciousness, then it's not a game no more. So that's the calls that the DMs have to do. But if he comes and he makes a lighthearted joke saying, well, I don't know what the evilest thing I can think of, slaughtering a bunch of babies, and kind of makes a joke out of it, it would still pass. And you could try to, it's up to the DM, but don't be shocked by that stuff.
Yeah.
Let it roll off your shoulder, because it's not real life, because it ain't gonna happen in real life. There's no way.
Yeah.
So.